Welcome back to another episode of Smart Money is Fresh Minds. I'm Joe.
And I'm Wesley. And today we did something a little bit different. Decided to do a video episode for you guys. And we had a special guest today, Ken Reese, senior partner here at Black Diamond. Started off talking about the firm and what we're doing here and what Ken's trying to build for us associates. And, you know, how we're different from other firms, being an RIA in the space. Here at Black Diamond, we look at every client's needs differently and through, a different light. We see, what each client needs, and we try to see, their vision for their own life and use the tools at our disposal to see how we're going to get there and work as a team with our clients.
And this is where we let our family at Black Diamond take care of yours. Ken, to start off, what do you think the expectation set to have a couple associates and bringing that into your practice? And why do you think some RAs that don't have young guys hinder from looking at a young advisor coming in rather than hiring an experienced one? What do you think are the pros and cons of that? And what do you have expected from us as Wesley and I, but also Derek and Austin?
Well, I think expectations are a really important thing, and it also speaks to the importance of a new person entering the field of doing the due diligence on the organization that they're going to. My specific expectation is not that you knew everything from the beginning, but that you understood the context and the framework that the firm had and the way we approach client interactions. So not to assume you knew everything, but to know how I wanted your skills to be developed into what end it serves the clients. I think oftentimes people coming into the industry will fall into the wrong spot and then think that they don't have the capacity to do the work, but it's because the work was never the right work to do in the first place. So for me, it was take the technical skills you have now and then see where you can apply them immediately, and then be prepared to expand them to the scope that we want at the firm. And then most importantly, it's when you're working with clients, it has to be empathy and you have to care about them first. So if I got the sense that that wasn't the case, that would probably be the heaviest, most initial conversations is care about people, care about the craft, and do excellent work for your clients to whatever capacity you have early on until you're running this thing.
Yeah.
So Ken, before bringing on associates into Black Diamond, what has happened or come about of it that you didn't see coming? Because I know that you put a lot of thought into it and probably tried to think of every scenario. Yeah. But I'll say, what are some things that surprised you? Then I have a follow-up question.
Yeah. So I think the biggest thing is when you start out, you see infinite time. I have all the time in the world to do what I want. You can't see the time wall that will hit you, where no matter how efficient you are, you get to a point where either you sacrifice on the quality of the work you deliver to a client, which isn't an option, or you stop taking on clients, which if you're trying to grow a firm isn't an option. To me, I didn't think that was ever going to be a thing. I always thought that I could prioritize my time and be efficient and always have capacity. It's not the case. All of you being here is the answer to that question. It is, okay, well, if this specific thing works really well, but I can't do it myself anymore, then we need to replicate it and bring more like-minded people to expand the capacity in the same efficient way. So it was the time limitation and not realizing that.
Obviously us associates learn a lot from you and the other senior advisors, but what are some things that you say learn from us, or have we helped you look at things in your practice and in life through a different light for doing it for so long? And, kind of listening to our questions and I'll say different ideas that we bring to the table. Is there any takeaways that you've had from us?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I think anytime you bring someone into an organization, if you assume that your way is the correct way, then you're being ignorant. So when all of you are working on your clients and working on files, seeing how you think about a problem, maybe I don't agree with it, but there's always that perspective that you have that helps me basically have a foil against my own thinking. Because if you do it long enough, you begin to assume that you're always correct. One of the things that I think has been appreciated is the push to spend time to think about cryptocurrency more as an alternative asset. But also just to lean in to communicating into the digital space in a way that would not have been advantageous 10 years ago. I think that is an entirely different thing that you just wouldn't do 10 years ago. And you're both leaning into it. And I think it's wise because if you get good information out to the public, you both have done a really good job of that. And I have learned that sometimes not be so specific and directed at one person, but casting the net wider is a useful thing to do. But absolutely, just you guys were in college more recently than me. So pulling out what is cutting edge at college, you don't know unless you go back to school, and I don't plan on doing that. So it's helpful to see the insights and perspectives you had from recently graduating.
Why do you think more and more people are transitioning from Wall Street to, as some people call it, Main Street or RIAs? And could you explain to like what an RIA is to some people that could be listening to this that have no idea what an RIA is?
Yeah, so I guess starting with the definition is important first. A registered investment advisor is just a legal organization that allows you to manage money, right? And charge a fee for the work that you do. The reason I think people are transitioning in the way that I always think about it for myself is obviously you want to earn a good living, but most people get into this job because they have the expectation that my skill set that I developed will help other people. I'll be able to organize that which is complex, and I will be able to help people get to a better position over time. What oftentimes happens is they find they enter an organization and they are forced to do whatever the firm dictates, regardless of the outcome for the client. And when your original intent is to do this full scope work for someone and you feel like you're fighting with one hand tied behind your back, it creates frustration. And then when someone realizes that, wait, there are organizations that want us to take a full scope. They want us to look at the investments in the context of anything else. They finally feel like someone took the hand behind their back and allowed them to approach problems with a full capacity. And I think that's why more people are moving from the traditional wirehouses, insurance-based firms to independents, because you have the freedom to do the work the way that you expected to do the work from the beginning.
I think there's a lot of people get caught up in the term financial advisor or financial planner, or if you're a CFP, as certified financial planner, that they think everyone's the same. And that if you really get into the nitty gritty and get into the details and actually do your due diligence about someone and you see what they do, that none of them are the same. It's kind of like our industry is more product based. It's always been like that way. Not saying that's the best thing or the right thing, but as a good advisor, you might have to take a pay cut because, that product that wherever firm you're at is forcing you to put your client into that product. That might not be the best thing for your client, but, in 5 years, it could be. I think that's where like Black Diamond comes in, where we can look at everything and not just be set in stone to saying, hey, this is what you're going to get. This is what you need. That's how it is. Yeah. We've sat in meetings with you and we've had people sit and they're like, well, my advisor told me to do this. And you can really just see the exasperation of they just want to be listened to and not just be forced to force a product.
And the frustrating thing for me, Joe, is that there are plenty excellent advisors and organizations that if they were practicing outside of their organization could do more excellent work. So I don't always necessarily blame those guys. They're doing the best work that they can with the limitations that are placed in front of them. But how do you have that context to know unless you see what's available to you, except from what you know? I think that's a frustrating thing. And you mentioned a couple of things like the word financial advisor. It's a licensing thing. And our industry, compared to other industries, has the lowest barrier to entry for recommendations that can have the most severe consequences for being incorrect. So if you're an attorney, you pass the bar. If you're a CPA, you have to be a public accountant. To be a financial advisor, you pass 2 tests that are, in my opinion, pretty easy. That's why you have to go get the CFP, but those are all optional. You don't need those things. So I think it's really important to know that a certified financial planner is a baseline that people should be working towards, that a firm has it and people do the work that way. But even then, you can just commodify that. I passed a test. It doesn't mean I actually do any of the things that the CFP curriculum wants us to do. And so any consumer should first say, okay, this person has credentials. But in the meetings with the advisors that have the credentials, they should ask, does the advice in the scope of the advice match the credentials? Because you could pass a test and forget all of it. If your practice doesn't actually show that you know, then what good is a test 10 years ago? You know what I mean?
So going back to financial advisor, people throw out the words financial advisor, financial planner. And the first thing that pops into most people's mind when you hear financial advisor is investments in the stock market. Can you kind of dive into why investments is just one piece of the puzzle? It's not the end all be all like some people make it out to be in some advisors, and how, you've instilled in us as associates here that, you have some things for certain. We know some things are going to happen in investments. That's, one uncertain outcome that we don't know, but just kind of dive into why that's just one piece and it's not the biggest piece, I'll say.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Wes, because a lot of times as a defense mechanism, someone will say, well, we just focus on this, as if it's an either or discussion. Either you do financial planning or you do specific investment management with the occasional financial planning. What I think I'm asking both of you to do is to do the investment work with excellence and do the financial planning with excellence. Mm-hmm. Why it's so important is if you can't establish the context of what the investments are doing, you have no way to measure or aim where they're going or what purposes they're serving. If the goal is to just grow absent any sort of perspective, the goal is infinite. It's unattainable. It's always more. Well, that means you're either working more, you're always chasing, you're doing whatever the case may be. But how do we know where this ends? Because infinite money is great, but you got to figure out where it's going. And so understanding taxation, understanding family dynamics, understanding the means to an end, which is the support of the people in your environment, that now brings to life what the investments are supposed to doing, and now gives someone something crystal clear, so that when I say we should be doing advanced trust planning or a specific option strategy or Roth conversions, they know that we're not doing it because it sounds fancy. We know that we're doing it because X, Y, and Z needs to happen in your life, and the quickest way to achieve that is to do X, Y, and Z. You cannot divorce a solution from the problem, and a lot of time advisors don't even establish the problem from the beginning. So that's probably how I answer that question.
It's kind of like, how can you look at someone's finances if you can't see the full picture? It doesn't work that way. You can't have one and the other. You've got to have both. And if you have people that have worked so much and they've saved so much, but then the biggest risk that I think now that people are facing is longevity risk. So how do we make people's money last, not just for them, but also, their heirs or whoever they want to have inherit their money. And I think people start so late when they could start so much earlier down the line, 15, 10, maybe even 5 years. That 5-year gap, that 10-year gap, that 15-year gap can make their lives so much more beneficial in a way of ownership and having assets and knowing the simple things that they could avoid, taxation. And it just gets the boxes ticking once they have those who want to have the conversation. Hey, do I want to retire? All right, if you retire early, what do you lose? Do you lose your group health? Now you have to go out and get private coverage. What's the deduction and pay that you're taking? It could be very minimal to them, but in the long run, it could be huge that people just don't understand.
So a couple of things that you said that I think are really important is that people come because they want to understand. When you're looking at a problem, you're staring at the problem that's right in front of you, right? And I think to do this job with any level of excellence is to begin to clarify the uncertain future. So, hey, retirement, how long are you going to live? How long are you going to be healthy while you live? What are your expenses going to live? We don't know that with any certain level of certainty. But if you can start to help people dream up what that looks like, and then have the skill to quantify that, so for the first time in their life, they can balance the decisions they're making at age 67 with the decisions they're making at 25, 35, or 45, you can now capitalize on those incremental improvements that you're talking about. Well, I want to go have fun right now because I don't know the difference in the cost of waiting for 5 years. But if I go tell you to save money you don't have to be better off in the future, that's a really bad proposition. People are going to say, no, I don't want to do that. But if you can do the work to show them how that they can find money that they don't have to still enjoy the life that they had now, and then also guarantee that they are going to enjoy the life when they're no longer working, like these false dichotomies on the hard part, it is always a both and. It is given the clear sight and doing the work that way. I think you're exactly right. If we can just give clarity to the problem and give people a framework to see their situation, it's not like we're telling them what to do. It kind of becomes self-evident because you brought the situation to life with such clarity that the decisions that they need to make are kind of obvious. At least that's how I think we're working to design our practices, to make those things self-evident.
And I think sometimes they get lost that, all right, you don't do investment management. I'm saying that's not what we're saying. We want to factor in your investments with everything else, because then we can look in different buckets and see, hey, are you overfunded here? Are you underfunded? Are you spending less? Are you spending more than you should be? At the end of the day, we're planners. It's in our certified financial planners. We're not investment advisors. Most of the time, people come to us and think we're just investment advisors. And I could be an investment advisor. Wesley could be an investment advisor. You could be an investment advisor, but I don't think we get the gratitude if we were just investment advisors. I looking at money. It's probably the way advisors get paid, but then if you actually see the full picture, it makes you a better person. It makes everything flow better.
So, a couple of things you said there, Joe. I'm 100%. I don't think it's an either or. Like, that's the most important. It's a both and. Mm-hmm. You want to be an investment advisor within the context of financial planning. And it's for whatever reason, the industry kind of keeps saying that you have to be one or the other. No, I'm asking both of you to be both at all times, but always lead with planning, because absent that planning, there's really no way to judge how the investment performance maps onto someone's actual objectives. I think that's a really good point. And also, you can be an excellent investment advisor to the extent that you give the scope and limitation of what you're doing. I only want to manage performance in an account. That's all I care about doing. I'm not going to look at anything else. Don't ask me to look at anything else. But I think more times than not, most people, when they think they're looking for financial advice, what they're looking for is someone to tie that performance to what they're actually trying to do, and not just arbitrarily do things in an account.
I think to bring it all home, through, investments are really important, but we don't get in our car and just drive around aimlessly. We don't just drive around all day, and not have a destination in mind. And so if we don't do that in our day-to-day life, why do we do that in our financial life? Yeah. We want to have, a reason, a destination in mind when we're making decisions through our financial life. And that's why it's important to go into, all right, figure out what our clients want in the end and how they want the retirement to look. If they want to go, what's the end goal for their money, inheritance goals and everything. I think that's the way to tie it all together, because we have to have a destination in mind in anything we do, to have purpose and put purpose in there. So I think, Ken, we look at like a financial picture, and, I think of it like a painting from a recent book that you recommended me to read. So we start with the vision of what we want to paint, and then us, the artist, the financial advisor, the financial planner, the artist. And then we have the canvas and the paint, which is all of our strategies, our tax planning, our investment planning, estate planning, and then we paint. But we have to have that vision first, which is the fundamental building block that we're getting at here. But I think it's good to know, how do you, in your initial meetings, get to that point? How do you ask the right questions and to figure out, the destination, where are we going? Because we're not driving around aimlessly, because that's the first initial step. So I just wanted to ask you, how do you get there with clients? And I know it's not easy, but.
Yeah, that's a really good question, but I'm going to use your analogy, right? Mm-hmm. You're talking about a painting. You're talking about all the tools go into a painting. Well, generally speaking, works of fine art are commissioned by someone for the painter to draw. Mm-hmm. To do the actual illustration is commissioned by someone. So that person wouldn't start the process until the explicit definition of what someone wants is crystal clear. Otherwise, the Mona Lisa might have looked totally different. Mm-hmm. So from my perspective, in my first meeting, my first question is, what needs to happen for this process to be worth your time and energy? Let's just come through tell me what needs to happen. Because if I can't deliver that, then our meeting can be very short. If I can, let's move. Second question, what are some of the obstacles that have gotten in the way of achieving the things that you want to have happen? So that I know some of the internal limitations that have been causing problems in the past. And then envision how our relationship will work going forward, and what do you expect me to accomplish? What did you expect me to accomplish before you met me? I then show the process in crystal clarity so people know exactly what I'm going to do, exactly how I think. I show them an example financial plan while illustrating that I had the technical competency to math what they just told me earlier exactly to a financial plan, to show without someone having to guess that yes, I can solve your problems, whether they require this solution, that solution, or this solution. But know that whatever I bring, whatever the color of the paints, whatever brushes I use, they're always going to go back to that first thing I told you. If you're going to commission me to paint a painting, I'm going to find out what you want me to paint. Otherwise, I'm not going to just start the process. I'm not going to just throw some paint up there. Where I think that's the best way to think about it, is define what you want me to do and determine if I can do it. I think that's the most honest way to approach anyone who's looking to engage a professional.
And I think it's important to note too that what you said is that you're making recommendations for someone, and you're not just looking at their financial life and saying, I think you should do this, that, and this, and that's it, and that I'm smart and I know more than you, so just do this. But you're working in tandem with someone to figure out what they want in life and how they want their life to look, and figuring, putting an action plan together on how they're going to get there.
Wes, that's a really good point, because a good advisor will do an action plan for right now. Do this because as of right now, here's what needs to happen. An excellent advisor knows how all those things are related and knows as the world changes how these relationships are going to change, and can point out the limitations of the advice right now that could be detrimental down the road given what someone said. Because that's why our job is so hard. You have to know how someone's life works right now, and then you have to filter through taxation, new tax law, legal changes, economic changes, the constantly updating financial market. And then your client has to trust you to not only know their file well enough to give them a recommendation right now, they have to know and trust that you're going to filter all of these things going out in the world. And at the next review meeting, they don't need to Google it. They're going to say, Wes and Joe are going to bring all of those changes to my file because they know who I am and they know how my situation works. I think that's what separates being a good advisor and being an excellent advisor.
It's a great point.
I would also back up where it's not a one-way street, it's a two-way street. You have to have, you're on the same page as your client, and also that you're putting the work, and also that they need to be listening and hearing what you're saying, and also getting you as much information as possible. Because the hardest part is then after that commitment meeting, where all right, I'm on board, but then you've got to implement everything of those recommendations. If they agree to those recommendations, is implementing all those, and it might take months. Especially in a small area where we are down the beach. Everyone knows Black Diamond. We're not in New York City. We're not on the 50th block. We're down Coastal Highway and off Plantation Road. So people know where the money's going, and that it takes a lot of time. There might be some hiccups here and there, but I think a lot of people have to set expectation that everything's going to be done right away. And it takes maybe that 4 or 5 months to get everything in the process, where I think those 4 to 5 months is probably the hardest, and where the work is mostly done after that meeting.
Yeah, I think that is, asking the question, what makes this worth your time and energy? Because if I can't get the information from my client, how am I going to give them any advice? And what am I working with? I'm shooting in the dark. If you ask me what's good or not, and I don't have any sight onto anything, you might as well throw a dart. Who knows? And I think when you show someone how serious their situation is to you, and you treat it with that level of seriousness, they're going to feel it in the meeting, and they're going to recognize that if that guy is so serious about me, then I'm going to be really serious about getting him the stuff he needs to be serious about me. And I think that's the key. And I think also knowing that you're a professional, you have a limited amount of time and energy, that if you're always chasing things, your client's going to be dissatisfied, you're going to be dissatisfied. And so just saying, here's how it's going to work. I need this to get it started. I can't wait till we do it. It'll just keep everyone on the same page. It's a really important thing.
I remember even like Rich telling me, he's like, you got to teach how and why. And that didn't really stick with me until like maybe this weekend when I was out in Westchester coaching a soccer tournament. And I kept telling my right back where to be in different spots of where the ball was located, but he wasn't really understanding. I was like, all right, I really have to teach the how and the why, because, you know, the ball is here that 1 second, it's now at another second. How am I going to position? Same thing when you're talking to a client. You can't just give all these recommendations, but then you have to explain what is the benefit, how is it going to work, and how is it down the line even be more beneficial for the client, which they not be seeing right now because you know what, they're 45, but in 5 years from now, they're 50. They're going to understand, all right, this is why Ken did this when I was 45. Now we're at age 50. All right, what's he going to do for me for the next 5 years or the next year or the next? So
that's a really good point, Joe, because, you know, your right back was just saying, why does this guy keep saying I'm doing everything wrong? No one wants to hear that they're doing things wrong all the time. And so I think when you're just showing the context as to how you can improve the situation and tie people to their own situation, that's the whole name of the game. If I have to tell someone what to do and they leave the meeting and their answer as to why they're doing it is because Ken said so, I have utterly failed in my job because it's not my money. It's not. All I am is a mirror and a consultant to what someone's trying to achieve. And I'm filtering whatever they're trying to do through my technical expertise so it can fly back on their plate. And they can say, I now have sufficient information to make a clear decision on these things. So you're exactly right. Just saying do X, Y, and Z is not correct. Because of these several things, here's why you do X, Y, and Z. And I think that's why so many people implement when we make the recommendations, because they know exactly why they're doing. And they know exactly why it's worth doing despite time and effort to do it. Because, there's oftentimes that power dynamic. Hey, Joe, do this, 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 and this. And you walk out and you're like, wait a second. Why? That's a really uncomfortable position to be in. So I think that's one thing as any associate is don't assume someone knows what you're talking about. If you see in a meeting some uncertainty, don't move forward until you know, because everyone being on the same page at all times is utterly important for sure.
Awesome. I think that's
good.
Yeah, all I have. There's some waves we need to go surf.
Yeah.
I met Ken through surfing. We both love to surf. But Ken, I want to know, what is the most embarrassed you've ever been in the water? Like you fell on a wave or something and you went, oh man, I hope nobody saw that. I was like packed out there. Like, I know there's a funny story there inside of you.
That's a great question. I hope my wife never hears this one. So my wife and her best friend, Allie, was down at the beach and it was one of those hurricane swells. And Hillary said, Ken, don't go out. Please don't go out. And I said, I'm going out for sure. And you know how it is when you're surfing is as soon as you get tired, bad stuff's going to start happening. I got tired. Hillary was giving me the, like, I can't believe you're doing this look. Shane was on the beach with Allie, her best friend. And I was drifting at the jetty back where it becomes a pure beach break and there's nothing to surf anyway. And I just got tired and I got lazy and a big set came in. I tried to paddle over it and that didn't work. So the way it comes, the board goes over my head. I land on my fins, I know I punctured my wetsuit. And I walk out. I know I'm cut. I know I'm bleeding. And my wife sees it all happen and she's got this look on her face. And so I get out of the water and I'm in such pain. I walk straight. No problem. As soon as she turns around, I start limping. When she looks back, I walk straight again. It was one of those embarrassing moments where I was just like, I have to grin and bear this because I cannot let her know how much I just hurt myself in this swell. So that is probably the most memorable, eating a little bit of humble pie and remembering I should listen to my wife.
I know everyone's wondering, did Hillary say, I told you so?
No, because I only limped when she was looking the other way.
Go one.
Yeah. That was a fun time.
Yes.
Ruined my wetsuit, though. Popped a hole in it.
Oh, that happens. That was an old one, not very
It
new.
was an excuse to get a better one.
That's always, board breaks. Oh, I need a new one. You got a hole in it. Oh, I need a new one.
It's one of my favorite things to need. Yeah, a new board.
There's a light at every tunnel. There's good and bad. You got to see the good and bad.
Well, Wes, let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
You and I surf, and we've been asking a certain someone to surf. So what do you think we need to do to get him into the water?
I think we need to call him out on a podcast to get him to go, and then everyone's going to watch this and force Joe to start surfing with us.
So, how many retweets or whatever you guys are doing do we need?
Oh,
Shares to get Joe in the water, and we'll have it.
Dude, no.
I think
that's a good idea.
I think we need
100.
One like.
one like.
It will fill Joe's first session. What do you think?
I think we need 200 likes and 5 comments. 5 comments and Joe gets in the water.
Will you agree to that?
Not 5 comments, because 5 comments is going to come from the whole company.
No, company doesn't count.
10.
10?
10 comments.
All right, 10 comments. There you have it.
There we go.
There we go.
That's terrible. When we fall and
We're going to do
I'll be stumbling, bumbling, and fumbling every time I go down the water.
That'd be awesome.
We're going to do a post-surf interview, too. We're going to get the whole thing.
Hey, we're going to tell you where to be just like that right back the whole time. That's
Yes, exactly. We're going to tell you how and why when you're surfing.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not going to like this.
I hate you guys.
Worldwide.
You're going to fall.
Oh, man.